Attorney General Merrick Garland had previously testified before the Judiciary Committee that the Department of Justice would prosecute any person that was protesting illegally in front of Supreme Court justices' homes if they had been arrested by the marshals, the U.S. Marshals who were tasked with defending the Supreme Court justices. That's what he said. But here's the rest of the story. Watch what Katie Britt, freshman senator from Alabama, watch what she found out when she was questioning the Attorney General
a couple of weeks ago. I am a big believer, and I've heard this all over the state of Alabama as I've traveled. People want justice to be blind. They believe that is a foundational building block of our nation, and until we restore that trust and confidence, people are worried about the direction our nation will go. So you testified several weeks ago before the Senate Judiciary Committee and fielded a number of questions from committee members regarding DOJ's failure to prosecute any individuals who were involved in the illegal protest outside the homes of multiple Supreme Court justices in the aftermath of the leaked Dobbs opinion. As you are well aware, 18 U.S.C. 1507 makes it a crime to picket or parade near a residence occupied by a judge. It says, with the intent of influencing any judge, juror, witness, or court officer in the discharge of his duty. In answering the questions from multiple members of the committee, you repeatedly asserted that DOJ's failure to bring any charges under Section 1507 was due to the fact that the U.S. Marshals who were protecting the homes of the justices failed to make any arrest under that statute. You said, quote, the marshals have been advised and they know, and the marshals on the ground, they have full authority to arrest people under any federal statute, including that federal statute, end quote. That was in direct reference to Section 1507. You went on to say, the Attorney General does not decide whether to arrest the marshals on the scene. They do make the decision of whether to arrest. After your appearance before the Judiciary Committee, we obtained copies of the slide deck that was used to train and prepare the marshals for their protective detail at the homes of the justices. Those training materials show that the marshals likely didn't make any arrest under Section 1507 for a pretty simple reason. They were actively discouraged from doing so. As you can see on the slide behind me, the marshals were explicitly told to avoid, unless absolutely necessary, any criminal enforcement action involving the protester. The slides went on to say, they explicitly state that making arrest and initiating prosecutions was not the goal of the marshals' presence at the homes of the justices, and the not was actually italicized and underlined. The next slide directs the marshals not to engage in protest-related enforcement actions beyond those that were strictly and immediately necessary and tailored to ensure the physical security of the justices. If you'll see in the next slide here, it discourages the marshals from making arrest under any Section 1507 by asserting that there may be a First Amendment right to harass the families of the judges, and by concluding that any arrest of protesters are a last resort to prevent physical harm of the justices. Mr. Attorney General, yes or no, were you at any point before your testimony in front of the Judiciary Committee aware of these training materials or the fact that the marshals had been heavily discouraged from making arrest under Section 1505?
I think this is the first time I've seen this slide deck, and frankly, from here, I can't make it out, for which I apologize for my eyesight, but I can't make it out. What I said before was correct. Their first and principal job is to protect the lives and property of the members of the court. And as I said at the time, first Attorney General who's ever ordered the marshals to protect the residences of the justices and to protect them 24/7.
Yes.
Okay, enough of this. Folks, here's Merrick Garland. I'm the first Attorney General to ever order marshals to protect the Supreme Court justice. It's because he's the first Attorney General who's had to, because the left has targeted the Supreme homes of the Supreme Court justices, making it unsafe for them to go to the grocery store, making the ones with small children, and there are a couple of justices who have small children, fearing for their kids' safety. as the protesters are outside their homes, so the kids can't play in their own yards. Let's just be clear here. This attorney general and the Department of Justice that he supposedly oversees instructed those marshals not to enforce the law as it related to an attempt to intimidate the Supreme Court of the United States in the hopes of having the decision that had been illegally leaked on Dobbs, the Roe v. Wade decision, on the Dobbs decision, in the hopes of having that decision rethought. They made a decision that the people who were protesting were their philosophical allies, so they would not enforce the law. No, there were no protesters in front of the three Democrat-appointed justices. There were zero in front of their homes. And the reason there were zero in front of their homes is this wasn't a protest designed to say to the Supreme Court. It was a protest designed to make it so the members who voted in favor of the Dobbs decision were intimidated into changing their minds. The intimidation didn't work, but no thanks to Attorney General Merrick Garland, who declined to actually not only enforce the law, but specifically instructed the marshals not to enforce the law. So let's talk about some of the things they should have done real quick. You know, what we've got is, let's just see, well, could you find a conspiracy of some group that was actually out there trying to rally people to, let's say, protest in front of Supreme Court justice homes, to intimidate and change the law in violation of federal law? Let's see, there's this group called Ruth Sent Us. What do they say? Well, they say, very simply, May 2, 2022, the Supreme Court had an unprecedented leak of its intention to overturn Roe v. Wade, eliminating abortion rights established over 49 years ago. Regular peaceful protests at the 6 fundamentalist judges' homes started the week of the leak and are sustained and growing. You're not allowed to do that. That is an admission that they are actually coordinating this, because they say use SCOTUS 6 and Ruth Sent Us to find protesters across social media platforms. So they're actively recruiting protesters to go and break the law. That is a conspiracy. So let's just be clear. We found it in about 2 minutes. So yes, there was a conspiracy. Did the Department of Justice investigate the conspiracy of who was behind sending protesters to engage in illegal activity? No, they didn't care. Let's see what Marco Rubio commented on this. This is way back 9 months ago, June 15th, 2022. And remember, Merrick Garland, 9 months later, he's already appeared before the Judiciary Committee on this exact subject, apparently never even looked into it. He didn't say anything. He didn't go and say, what the heck is going on here? Were there instructions? What's going, why am I getting beat up on this? Why didn't we have any prosecutions? He did it because the reason he didn't look into it is because he knew the answer. So let's look at what Marco Rubio wrote. I'm just going to start from the middle of his letter and put it up here on the screen. Despite the damage, this is right here, despite the damage that has already been done, and even though these groups have kept their promise to raise the violence stakes, the DOJ has not been faithful to its promise of ensuring public safety against these violent radical activists, Rubio wrote. To date, there has not been a single charge brought against any individual or group, despite the countless pro-life centers in America that have been firebombed and vandalized in recent months. So this is referring to the vandalism of pro-life centers. But if you look at the first part of it, Rubio previously urged Garland to prosecute those intimidating U.S. Supreme Court justices. So 9 months ago, our Attorney General, Garland, had he was notified by a member of the Senate that there were radical groups who were out coordinating this. He ignored it then, and he plays dumb now as if this is the first he's ever heard of this. There's a couple of things that Congress needs to do. We know that if they charge him with perjury, that it'll never be enforced, and you can't actually prosecute a sitting attorney general. So it's kind of one of the rules. So given that, but even if you could, the people who'd be prosecuting would be the people who work for him, and that trick never works. So given that, you're not going to have a prosecution of Merrick Garland for lying to Congress or failure to do his duty. Congress could impeach Garland. And we've put a petition up urging people to impeach Garland, and that's been successful. It's gotten a lot of comment. A lot of people have jumped onto it. But what Congress also can do is they need to get to the bottom of who wrote these memos, who wrote the training manual on this, who approved the training manual on this, and seek those people to be fired and demand those people be fired. And if they aren't fired, then Congress has the right and responsibility to zero out these career supposed civil servants and say, we're not going to pay your salary. The House of Representatives can say, we're not paying your salary, and pass that in the appropriations bill that passes funds the Justice Department, and then send it to the Senate and let Katie Britt carry the ball about not paying the salaries of people who are deliberately obstructing justice and putting our Supreme Court justices' lives at risk. This is just another example of the two-tiered justice system that we all abhor. Join us. Come to Americans for Limited Government. Come to our getliberty.org site. Check it out. We look forward to having you. And please share this video so others can see the obvious lies and attempt to cover up a Department of Justice conspiracy to put our Supreme Court justices' lives at risk for partisan political purposes. This is Rick Manning, Americans for Limited Government, signing off.